Covenant Kids Sunday School, and welcome back to another week in Advent. So last week we looked at hope, and this week we look at love. So before we get into that, I want to remind you about some pretty cool things that we've seen as we've been doing all these lessons. We've met lots of animals. We've met more animals in a big boat with a cool rainbow. We met a man who finally could have a baby named Abraham, and what was cool about him was all the stars that we've seen, because he was reminded that he would have a family that big one day. Then we met Joseph and his amazing colorful coat, and then jealousy. And then saving his family because he was so amazing at Egypt, and he brought his family there and saved them from starvation. And then we met little baby in a basket floating away, picked up, rescued by Pharaoh's daughter, and then eventually he moved on, and we seen this huge burning bush, and then all these plagues and walking through dry ground. And then we met Joshua and the fortress of Jericho, which came tumbling down. And last week we met little David and being anointed, even though he's the smallest, anointed as king. And then he defeated the great, big, scary Goliath. So God's people have been through a lot of crazy things, and each time God was there and rescued them and helped them and saved them, and so that gave them such great hope. If you remember, we talked about hope last week. So now we're going to go on to love, and here's a great story in the Bible about God's love and someone else who showed great love to God and how that saved him and rescued him, and it was a perfect part for God's rescue plan. So for today's story, you can find it in the Bible, and if you turn all the way to the book called Daniel, and it's a whole book about it, and there's lots of cool stuff that happened with him, but we're going to kind of summarize it and focus on one cool thing that happened to him with the help of God, of course. So things were not looking good for God's people at this point. They'd been captured and they'd been taken far away from their home, and now they were slaves of the king of Babylon. But God didn't leave his people. He was with them, and he was looking after them. Daniel loved God very much and obeyed him. Now, God had given Daniel the ability to understand lots of different things. So he was a very smart guy. And he had the ability to interpret dreams. And it wasn't long before the king, his name was King Darius, noticed this. And he made Daniel one of the most important helpers of all. He became one of the leaders of the wise men that were in his courts. So he put him in charge of all of these people. But, of course, these other wise men did not like that. They became quite jealous, and they tried very hard to find a way that they could bring down Daniel and get him in trouble so that they would be noticed as well. They wanted to get rid of him. So they spied on Daniel. They tried to find things that were wrong with Daniel, things that he did that were against the law, but they couldn't find anything. Nothing. There wasn't anything he did wrong. He was a very loyal person and helper for the king. But there was one thing that he did very, very consistently. Every day, 3 times a day, he got down on his knees, closed the door in his room first, and then got down and kneeled, and he prayed to God every single day. Well, this they seen as an opportunity for themselves, and they told the king and said, let's get the king to make a law. No one is allowed to pray to anyone except to the king. Daniel won't obey this law, and he will be punished. So they hurried off, pleased with themselves, and they thought they were so clever, and they walked to the king, and they told him this new idea they had. Everyone must pray only to you, king, they told him. Well, King Darius thought this was a great idea, and he told everyone in his kingdom, only pray to me. You may not pray to anyone else. You can only pray to me. And if you disobey me, you will be punished. And the punishment will be being thrown into a pit of lions. Well, when Daniel heard this, he knew that this was wrong, and he knew it was wrong to not pray to God. So, even though he knew he would be punished, and even though he knew he could get caught, he said, my God, I love him too much, and I know he loves me and will take care of me, so I am going to continue to pray to him. And so he did, just like every other day. He went and closed the door, went and knelt, and he prayed. Well, those little other wise men were sneaking around, peering in the windows, and they saw him, and they said, ha, we got him. And they were so happy. Immediately, they went and told the king, and they said, King Darius, someone is disobeying you. Your favorite wise man, Daniel, has decided to pray to God. He's not listening to your law. You need to punish him. This made King Darius so sad. He didn't want to hurt Daniel, but he knew he had been tricked, and he knew he couldn't change the law. So he had to throw Daniel into the lion's den. And as he threw him in, he said, Daniel, may your God, whom you love so much, rescue you. And with that, he walked away, and he went to bed. And that night he couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, and he was so upset because he loved Daniel, and he appreciated Daniel, but he couldn't do anything about it, and he hoped and was praying to the God that maybe he would be okay. Well, guess what? When he opened the den and peered in there the next day, Daniel, are you okay? Well, what do you think happened, kids? Was Daniel okay? Did God rescue him? Well, we know he did. God had sent an angel to protect Daniel. He sent him to close the mouths of the lion, and Daniel was safe. So King Darius told him, pull him out of there. So out came Daniel, and he showed everybody, look, not even a scratch. He is safe. And the God he loves protected him and took care of him and rescued him. After that, King Darius said, there will be a new law. You will not pray to me. You will pray to God, Daniel's God, the true God, because he is the God who rescues, and he is the true God. Daniel was a faithful and obedient follower of God, and he loved him so very much. And yet, even though God knew how much he loved him, God still allowed him to be thrown into the lion's den. He allowed him to be put in a place where he could be extremely harmed. So you wonder, we know God could have stopped that from happening, but why did he let it happen? Well, it's the same as for us. God loves everybody so much, and he wants everybody to know how much he loves us. And he knew that Daniel was a faithful servant of him, and he knew that Daniel trusted him enough and that he would not stop serving and loving him, even if the law suggested that he could be harmed. And God knew that he could use this to show the Babylonians that he loves you. He will protect you. He's going to rescue you. And the same can be true for us. God sent Jesus on Christmas Day, and he showed us that Jesus came. And we've seen heard about all the miracles, and we read about it in the Bible. And then we know that he sacrificed himself because he loves us so much that he would sacrifice himself. He wants us to know that love. So this Advent, look forward to knowing and realizing how much God loves you.